Hi.
Hi.
How you doing, Rachel?
I'm so good. I am in a really great place.
Good.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy to be recording.
Yes. I know. I feel like the last couple weeks we've recorded, but we did the fun park recording. So it wasn't as, not intentional, that's the wrong word, but like we were more free with the agenda. We didn't have like a set.
Yeah, and I didn't feel like we were really talking to each other
Right.
so much.
Right. Yeah. So I feel like we're coming back together
It does feel like that.
in real
It
life.
feels good.
It feels good.
It's been a wild couple of weeks here.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had, let's see what's happened. All the fall things are happening, right? Or have been happening. We're kind of like rolling right into the holidays now.
Yes. There's been a lot of cosmic activity.
Cosmic activity,
Events.
personal events and activities.
Oh, yeah. There's just so much to catch up on.
Yeah, there's so much. All right, what are your top 3 things that have happened in the last couple of weeks?
I got Reiki 1. So I got attuned, which we'll talk about, which has been amazing. Astrologically and energetically, there's just been a lot going on, which we'll also touch on what has been happening in my personal experience with that. And there's so much, but I'm trying to the 3 major things would be, I think, I don't know. I'll have to come back to it.
What about 3 things that you and your family have done?
We have celebrated Graham's birthday, his 9th birthday. We had
I can't believe he's 9.
fun-filled, packed weekend, all winning at sports. It was like one of those weekends. Sometimes you have winning weekends, and then sometimes you have losing weekends, and we had a winning weekend, and that was incredible. Emmeline had soccer games on Saturday and Sunday and was the catalyst to score the winning goals at both of her games, which was wild and fantastic to watch. What about you? What are 3 top events that have taken place within your core group of humans?
It's been all swim, music, marching band, all the things. Evie had 2 shows, which she just crushed. She had great shows. Charlie's had a couple competitions with the marching band. Evie auditioned and made jazz band. She had a monster swim meet, also good. She had a monster weekend in general. Same with your kids. It was dropping time on all the things and found out she made jazz band and,
Yeah.
It's been a couple of weeks where she's just feeling super good. And
Yeah.
Doing all the things. Personally, I have been really stepping into my power and attracting abundance to me, which has been fantastic. And I've just been grounding and working through stuff and just the whole process of stepping into my power. And again, this is a time for me, the fall especially, it's all about renewal and transformation. So I'm feeling a lot of that energy.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, let's welcome everybody to this episode.
Welcome to 2 Mystic Mamas.
Yay!
I never know if we're going to be are we going to introduce it or are we just going to say it? And I kind of love that it's never exactly the same.
No, yeah.
That's boring.
We don't have one of those intro. We have our intro music and outro music, but we don't have a welcome to the 2 Mystic Mamas podcast where we get together and then you start the actual episode.
I think it's kind of our thing that we don't have that, although maybe someday somebody's going to force us to have that. Who knows?
No, never.
Never.
That's going to be on my don't alter list, but I could probably be persuaded. Have you met Rachel? My willpower is not super strong all the time, especially if it's having an experience, living my life.
You and Charles are very much the same in that vein.
Yeah, I'll be I am not going to have carbs. Oh my God, this amazing new Italian restaurant opened up. Would you and Jeff like to go? Yes, I would. I would like to go and eat all the carbs.
We literally had this conversation yesterday morning where I was talking about getting up and working out and having time and space for that. The issue is that a lot of times we don't get to bed early enough to do that and feel rested. Because like as we're getting older, like you need more rest in order to feel good. And the morning is my feel good time.
Yes.
Personally. Yes. And so I was like, I think I just need to like figure out a way, which is hard when we have rehearsals until 9 or 10 o'clock at night sometimes, right? All of us.
Yep.
So I worked until 9 last night. And I got home at like 9:30, but halfway through the day, so we had this whole conversation. I was like, I think this is what I want to do. And he was like, well, maybe on nights that I have late nights, maybe just get in bed, be ready to fall asleep, because it's hard. Like the car lights come in the window, like when you pull into our house and stuff, and Griswold barks. So it's not really conducive to me actually falling asleep before he gets home. Once
I'm asleep for the first couple hours, don't wake me. I can't wake up.
Yeah, no. So
but I like that. I like that idea.
Yeah. But then to the point of what you were talking about, I'm walking out the door. We had this conversation, and 2 hours later, he's like, hey, we don't have anything to do tonight. You want to meet me at the bar at 9:30 and people watch the karaoke? And I was like, we just talked about going to bed early so we could work out in the morning.
Yeah.
It was a hysterical conversation.
But what did you end up doing?
He was at rehearsal until like 9:45. So he came home and we worked on our schedule until almost midnight because he has all these new dates to add into the calendar. Like figuring out how to maneuver all of the things through May of next year. So we didn't do any of the things that we wanted to do. We sat there and did adulty things.
Adulting.
I mean, that's literally what our life is, though, this like juggling act of the schedule. So it is very important to our mental health.
Correct.
That we actually have a plan.
No, it is. It is, for sure.
Especially when he's trying to schedule out his rehearsals and his shows and stuff like that for this next season. And I have to have radical acceptance of all of the things.
Ding, 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 ding. That's the topic of the day.
It is. So earlier this week, we were having a conversation, and we've had all of our podcasts planned out up until this point in terms of topic, right? We knew what we wanted to talk about, and we were kind of going back and forth on, okay, what do we want to discuss on our next recording?
We logically think about what else we have before that and after that, because we have some guests coming on.
Right.
We always plan very well in advance when we record our episodes, because that's just part of our life schedules too. We were coming up with what to talk about.
We had planned 8 weeks in advance.
Yes.
Except we left 2 openings for the universe to happen, basically.
Which it has.
It has. So I asked her if she had ever heard of the term radical acceptance.
She said, let's do a podcast on radical acceptance. And I was like, cool. What is radical acceptance? I had never heard of the term.
So I do have a quote here. So there is a Buddhist monk and peace activist who has spoken very broadly on this.
Okay.
An invitation to embrace ourselves with all our pain, fear, and anxieties, and to step lightly yet firmly on the path of understanding and compassion. And that is his definition of radical acceptance.
All right, so let's go with Krystyn's definition with radical acceptance, because that's what I learned on Monday of what it was. And then on Tuesday, got dealt my first dose of trying to have radical acceptance in real life.
I also had not heard about radical acceptance. And this was probably 6 years ago now. I was in a therapy session.
Mm-hmm. A cognitive behavioral therapy session? Okay.
Yeah. And my therapist, she was fabulous. She had started talking about this term radical acceptance, and she had actually sent me a podcast on radical acceptance, and she was like, listen to this. And I could not with these 2 girls' voices. I didn't make it very far at all.
Isn't that interesting? Like,
I could not.
There's just certain humans where you're like, oh my God, it's like nails on a chalkboard. It just makes you go, nope, so sorry. We're going to have to figure out how to read this.
But I did dive into it.
Okay.
It's really like the ability to be able to accept situations that are out of our control without judgment, without it blowing up our world.
Yes. And I was like, I can get down with this, because naturally I started thinking with that. And throughout my almost 42 years of life on this planet, I have not had radical acceptance. And what that looked like when I did not lean in to radical acceptance, which naturally you can't lean into something you don't know about. But now that I do know about, I'm like, oh. And then you start playing, I start playing that, had I done this, wow, what would that have looked like instead of what it ended up turning out to be?
To be clear, radical acceptance is not about being passive or unempowered. Radical acceptance is about easing suffering.
Correct.
Where we're not turning things into our own suffering
and pain. Correct.
Because they're beyond our control. Yes. Whether it's a logistical situation, whether your flight is canceled, or whether it's somebody's actions that you love, involving a person, a place, a thing, it doesn't matter. We can have radical acceptance that maybe we don't have control over what's happening, but we don't have to turn that into suffering.
Correct. And that's really when I started preparing for this podcast after that initial conversation and looking into it, there is a lot of history, now that you brought up that quote, within Buddhism too, that again, when you recognize...
Did you just say Buddhism?
I did.
I love it.
I didn't want you to say anything.
I'm so sorry, but Buddhism? I can't let that go. Buddhism.
I know, that's Rachel's take on it.
I'm sorry, I love it.
But I don't
so
even
much.
know what it would be. What is it?
Buddhism.
Buddhism. I think Buddhism is...
Do you think Mark Cubano practices Buddhism?
Yes, I do.
You guys.
Buddhism.
We just never know what's going to happen here. But welcome
to... Well, just add that to the book of Rachelisms. So back to what I was saying.
Sorry, not sorry. I'm like, she's really just gonna keep going, and you weren't looking at me.
I know. I was like,
would not
I
make
knew as
eye
soon
contact.
as I said it, I was like, that is not the right word. But
she's looking straight ahead, not making eye contact.
We're just gonna go with it.
Oh my God! You knew exactly what you did. I love you so much.
I know. So you guys, you just gotta have radical acceptance for what comes out of Rachel's mouth. You never know. It could be real. It could be fake. It could be a new word. Buddhism. I mean, they might not find it funny though. But
oh my God. We might have just written my next book. It's gonna be called Buddhism.
It can star a whistle pig.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a book about radical acceptance and self-love. And it's going to be called Buddhism.
There you go. You're welcome.
It's happening, guys.
Basically, in Buddhism, when pain presents itself, and pain can be physical, it can be emotional, it can be spiritual, mental, pain presents itself in different ways. But the natural reaction to pain is to stop pain. If you physically are injured, you're going to go and take care of that issue so you're not in pain anymore. And a lot of people, the whole association of like your body tells your brain that you're in pain, you don't actually know until that happens, that kind of deal, but how to stop the pain. And so radical acceptance is more of like a mental pain that happens. It's a way of not holding on to it and letting go of the pain and seeing it through a different lens of, I can't control what I can't control, but I can control how I feel about it. And if I don't want to be in pain, I have to accept. And this is, as many topics are that we talk about, something that happens over time. You work on this. It could take a whole lifetime to have radical acceptance over something specific. And then as you work on it, when life happens and issues arise that you can't control, you can have this tool in your toolbox that you can use and move forward.
One of the things that came out of this idea for me was that life is this big ride. And we know that I'm an ocean girly. And when I related life to the waves, and I was like, I can't stop the waves from coming, but I can learn how to surf. I can learn how to ride them. And I can learn how to navigate through difficult scenarios, situations, emotions, all of that.
And there's different size waves.
Exactly.
There's different aggressiveness of there's so many life situations. That's such a beautiful visualization that you can associate to life. You can associate it to the ocean. Some days the oceans are super calm. Right now, we're going to get into a real life story. I feel very open to talking about where the radical acceptance came into my life. And it actually does involve quite a bit of water because it had everything to do with a hurricane. So Krystyn and I had this conversation on Monday, and on Tuesday, there was a hurricane that was, if you're listening in other parts of the world, there's been a couple massive hurricanes that have descended onto the United States in the last 3.5 weeks. Helene was one that came in and just devastated North Carolina and eastern Tennessee in the mountains specifically. It did.
As well as parts of Florida.
As well as parts of Florida. It's one of those things that when you talk to a Floridian that has lived there their whole life, they're used to hurricanes, right? So they're used to the energy that comes with it. They're used to the prepping, if you will, and how to handle it. But Helene, she unleashed a lot of devastation in the mountains, and a lot of people lost their lives, and they're still trying to figure out all of that. And it's just been crazy.
There was no way for them to prepare for what happened.
Yeah. Right. The amount of water. And it really was the flooding that caused most of the devastation. It was the amount of water and the flooding that the infrastructure, I mean, it broke records. Like, they had never seen anything like this. And so on the tail of that came Hurricane Milton, which came west to east, which is not common. And so it gained a lot of strength over the Gulf of Mexico and was slated to slam into Cape Coral and Fort Myers, where my brother and my sister-in-law and my nephew live. And so it was one of those things when we started talking on Tuesday and the news was reporting how devastating the storm surge was going to be and just how massive this hurricane was and how it was going to hit that neck of the woods, or it was going to go into Tampa, which Tampa Bay, you probably know this because you're into this and you know all the tribal things. But Tampa Bay, there is a lot of indigenous history in that neck of the woods. I don't want to say supposedly, but I'm going to use that word because I don't know for a fact how to reference it. There was a ton of burial ground in where Tampa Bay is located, and so it's protected. And they always say that it will never get decimated because of the protection of the indigenous people of the land that used to reside there.
Didn't they build it like 20 feet high too? That particular section of land?
Maybe. I mean, Tampa Bay itself is huge.
Right. I feel like there's like definitely a sacred ground there that was built.
Yeah. So basically it's always like one of those things where they always say it's going to hit and then it moves at the last minute, whether it goes south or it goes north. I don't think Tampa Bay has taken a direct hit from an eye of a hurricane ever that I know on record.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So
they typically don't go across the Gulf that way. They typically will go the other direction when they go in the Gulf, I believe. I feel like they don't typically go all the way across the Gulf to Florida.
Oh, they cut up?
I feel like they cut up. Yeah, usually.
Maybe. So there was just a uniqueness to Milton, and he was coming in really strong. And naturally, we live up in Pittsburgh, right? So we're not down in the throes of it. And so we were just asking them, okay, so what's the plan? My brother was like, we're just going to stay really positive. And I was like, cool, that's not a plan. And there's a couple things at play here, and I am being vulnerable and sharing, but I am the oldest of 3, and I think that I have really had to learn to accept the fact that my siblings are their own individual people, and they can make choices, and I have to accept those, and I don't have to insert myself into situations that have nothing to do with me. And I have learned this over time because naturally growing up, I always had to help them because they had a speech impediment, so nobody could understand them. I could understand them, so I was always communicating for them. There were 2 of them. They were younger than me. They got picked on a lot, so I was always advocating for them in that regard too. And I think when you grow up doing these things, not knowing any different, that can be a hard adjustment when you become of age and you turn into adults and you don't want to necessarily tell them what to do. So I've really had to work on that.
I think just the fact that you can acknowledge that and understand that that's where it stems from is like a beautiful part of that healing process for all three of you.
Right.
Because that's really hard to do. And it takes a lot of time and really stepping back to be able to acknowledge a catalyst and then make actionable change on it. And honor that those tools, kind of like those conditioned tendencies, right, served a purpose at one time. That doesn't mean they serve a purpose now. And it doesn't mean we have to hold on to them, even though your heart is in advocating for them.
Totally. Like I always come from a place of love. I have a servant heart, right? So my natural inclination is like, how do I help you solve this problem? And then the feedback is, this isn't a problem.
Right.
It may be a problem for you, Rachel, and you have to figure that out. This was no different. It got to the point where I found myself texting him and saying, you should do this and you have to do this. And what about this? And you need to leave and you can't stay and it's going to be this. And having him come back and basically refute everything that I was saying. And then I got to the point where I found myself getting very worked up about it. And then I was like, oh, right. So this is the topic for our podcast this week. And the universe is like, here you go. You want a real life example? This is it. It just became so crystal clear to me that I had to accept it and let go of that and let it be.
It's about honoring difficult situations in whatever form they come to us, because it's the present moment. It may not be the moment that we want. It may not be how we think things should be done. It may not be what we wish for, but it is what's happening in the present moment. And I was reading something earlier today that I had actually written in an Instagram post. I was looking for something, so I was going back, and this was a few years back, and I had put a video up, and it just said, life is a journey to be lived. I don't even think this is mine. I don't actually know. I'd have to go back. I just saw it. Life is a journey to be lived, not a problem to be solved.
Yep. And I was going to say that too, where when you start intersecting your journey with other people's journey, you have to also have acceptance that they're not one and the same. Their experience that they needed to walk through is going to gift them lessons that they need to learn. And if I step in the way of that and I intervene, that can fuck that up for them.
And I think that this is a lesson that we should learn now, because one of the hardest forms of this is going to be coming for us in the next decade or so. And that's going to be our children's choices.
Yes.
Because
yes,
they are their own people with their own life, with their own journey and their own trajectory.
Right.
And we are not 100% going to agree with that. And we have to have acceptance of that. And us really working on these tools, my hope is that this is going to help cultivate a better relationship for us with our children.
It's so true, because part of radical acceptance too is like the suffering and pain that come with not having radical acceptance can lead to other manifestations within the body. And then if you let go of that pain and you're not giving it any more energy, then you allow yourself to heal and you allow yourself to remain at peace, which is a goal that I have every day. How can I remain grounded? How can I be at peace within myself for my actions and how I portray myself to others?
I think if I can share something here, is that a tool that I learned from Vanessa, our wonderful somatic coach, was that these conditioned tendencies for me had built up because I needed them in times of trauma. They can still live within you. So if you have things that you're really struggling to have acceptance for, you don't necessarily have to completely release them, because a lot of this stuff might be ingrained in us. Like, you are an advocate. You are a problem solver. You want to offer solutions and serve people and help people. While that's not always what the situation calls for, you can still have it within you without feeling like you have to completely release it. So if you have a part of yourself and you're listening and you're like, yeah, I don't like this part of myself, or I keep doing this, just remember that this characteristic that you have, or this go-to, served you a purpose at one time, whatever it might be. And you can allow that to exist within you, but it doesn't have to live in the front seat. You can put it in the trunk.
Yes.
And if you break down on the side of the road, you can pull it out of the trunk and you can use the tool. But it does not have to exist with you in your day-to-day life where it's this wall and this automatic mechanism that is standing in the way of you and your choices or you and your relationships with people.
Yeah, you're spot on.
I also have had to have radical acceptance with the recent hurricanes in a very different way.
Well, that's kind of what not spawned this necessarily, but we had talked about that last week when you were really working through. So please share.
I lived in Western North Carolina for 3 to 4 years around that time. And
how old were you?
I moved there when I was in 6th grade.
Ooh, so very formative.
Very, very formidable.
That's the word.
I lived there through part of 9th grade. I started high school there and then moved to Pittsburgh. Obviously, none of those moves were my choice. And for me, there was a lot of trauma around them. There was a lot of mystery around them. I've held this
a lot
place.
Of unknown?
A lot of unknown.
Right.
A lot of unknown. A lot of unanswered questions that I've always had.
Lack of transparency.
All of it.
Yes.
Right. I really felt as though that area specifically and the people that I had connections with that I was never able to talk to again, I've always felt in my heart that I hoped that there would be a time when I could go back there and find answers or see people. When I was watching the floodwaters literally rip through places that I lived, looking at pieces of land that I'm like, I've literally been there. Like, I've seen this place before. I've been there. It makes me very emotional. Like, I've really struggled with it. Parts of my history were completely washed away. Part of it was God. Like, how many of these people that died in these floodwaters did I know, that I have contact with at some point in my life, that I go to middle school with, that I never talked to again? And the other part was really selfishly, like, some of these places are gone now. Like, I'm not going to have the chance to go back and revisit this spot or this building and reminisce and unlock something in my brain that was going to help me release this trauma.
I don't think that's selfish.
It feels selfish.
Yeah.
It feels selfish.
Right.
Because there's people out there that have like lost their lives and their homes and their family members and their friends and their livelihoods.
But this is your experience.
I understand it's my experience, but I still feel guilt for making this a moment about me, even though it's not, and it's just my experience. All of this to say that I am now processing and having radical acceptance for the fact that there are parts of my life that I'm never going to have answers to. I'm never going to be able to unlock some of these mysteries, and I just have to be okay with that. I have to honor that I had this experience. It was out of my control, and now I'm having a new life experience, and move on. Also, at the same time, I was talking to another girlfriend about this. She's like, and she lives down there, close to there. You know, I was keeping in close contact with her because they've been without power for weeks and all of the things. And she's like, isn't it ironic, though, that area was just washed away? This place that holds all of this for you was literally cleansed away.
We were talking about that too, just thinking about the visualization of what you wanted to accomplish by going back and revisiting this spot to find healing, to find closure, to find answers, to visually see that it's completely and radically changed by the force of Mother Nature.
And I was completely and radically changed by that time in my life.
By water. There's so many symbolisms and connections that I think are both beautiful and painful.
100%.
At the same time. And I think even, now the stories that are coming out are, yes, they're still doing so much work, and they will be for the next decade. But there's so many beautiful, incredible stories that are still surfacing from that area that are bringing together humans that wouldn't have otherwise been brought together. They're going to form new connections. The energy that is coming out of this, the beautiful energy that is coming out of this tragedy, is not something that you can create without having a catastrophe.
Mass destruction.
That happens.
Yeah, I know.
So it's like you have this balance. You have a balance on one hand where you're like devastated, full of despair, grief, and all of these really hard experiences. And then on the other side of the balance, you have these incredible moments of beauty, love, and community. It balances each other out.
Right. I pulled 2 cards this morning in my reading. They were the Death card and the Queen of Wands. And the message was very, very clear to me. It is a huge time of transformation right now. And you cannot have these beginnings without endings. And the other side of that is that it is time to step into my power and trust and honor my intuition in a way that I have not. And not allow my power, my gifts, my essence to be held back any longer by things that are attached to the past that I have no control over. This overarching theme that continues through all my readings, through all of my life lessons, as I'm like working through all of this healing in my life and just being a person, just having joy. To what I said earlier, life is not just a problem to be solved. We're here doing this work and we're trying to heal and we're trying to get better. But that doesn't mean that we're not living in joy every single day of our lives.
Well,
which we both do.
That's the goal, right? That's the goal. And I think too, to your point, that because of this tragedy, the energetic cords that you had associated to the physical spots in some of these locations, it was a gift that you no longer have to try to break those cords. They've been broken. The power has been returned to you on some level.
And you can live in joy without healing. I want that to be clear. If you have something that you're dealing with and you are just like, I can't even begin to go there to try and heal this. I just need to leave it where it is and have radical acceptance for it. We fully support you in that. And you can have joy on the other side of that and not feel like you have to fix everything that is perceivably wrong with you or that you've dealt with or traumatic situations. They can just be what they are.
Yes. And that's the beauty of life. And I think that's such an important message. I've talked to people at different funerals and different events where things happen and you're so deep in the grief, but you get these glimmers and you have joy and you smile and you laugh. And it makes it a little easier. And you just keep doing that. There should be no guilt associated with that. That is not a shameful thing to feel grief and joy at the same time. We've talked about this before where, and also, that term, and also, you can be living in something and also finding gratitude. It's not without the other. I want to bring us up a little bit here and talk a little bit about what also happened this week in conjunction with the hurricane. So this week has just been a lot. That's just life. You're going to have weeks where it's a light week, and then you're going to have weeks that it's a very heavy week. And so I had scheduled...
Just like a period.
Just like a period. So I had scheduled to have Reiki 1, my first Reiki 1 invocation attunement, I think is the correct term. I had scheduled this 4 weeks ago, and it just so happened that it was going to be Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And Milton was slated to slam in to the coast at 7. And I had been toying with, should I reschedule? Because I knew that I was a little bit all over the place. And then it just dawned on me. I'm like, no, this is perfect timing. This is not a coincidence. This is in divine time that I will be working with another incredible light worker to lift the energy of ourselves into this space where I can receive this attunement at the same time that something catastrophic is about to happen. And I felt very at peace with it. I had already started to envision the archangels and God and written a prayer on Facebook the night before for everyone in Florida, specifically though my brother and my sister-in-law and my nephew and my friends in Tampa. I have a lot of friends in Tampa. I had also text messaged these people, specifically this particular prayer that I had written. So I had done a lot of work to put into this protection. And so I was like, let's do this, Reiki. I am here for it. This is a gift to myself. I feel very strongly. I feel very called to do Reiki. If you are listening and you're like, I don't even know what the fuck Reiki is, it is a Japanese form of energy healing. And it has to do with the chakras that run down the length of your body. Reiki is now pretty worldwide and pretty known. I am working to become a Reiki master, and so I can do Reiki for myself, for others. You can do it on animals. It's healing and providing energy healing that has a whole slew of incredible benefits. And so the first class, we get into the session. It's just my instructor and myself. We start talking about different things that are going to take place in the session. And one of the beautiful things with Reiki, the energy can either present as pink, energy coming out of your hands, or rainbow. And I was like, what? I've always had the love of
is
rainbows.
A rainbow girly, you guys.
Since I think I came out of my mother. Like I have always, I have pictures of that I drew when I was Isla's age where I just have rainbows everywhere. I just have always been obsessed with the rainbow. And so since I've been on this spiritual journey for just over a year now, these themes keep coming up about the rainbows. Yes, rainbows are signs from the other side, and they're universally known for peace and love and new beginnings, which is great. But it keeps coming up that I'm like, oh, this has always been within me, this whole incredible part of me that I'm now opening up and bringing forth. That was really cool. I was like, it's rainbow. I have rainbows flowing out of my hands.
Yeah, you are a rainbow.
I am a rainbow.
That's so cool.
I know. It was the whole night was just amazing. And I'm so grateful to be able to learn another modality of how to help people. We do tarot cards, both of us. And that's another form of help and healing and insight. And it flows through us. It's not from us. And I just find that to be so rewarding. And from a communal standpoint, too, you can uplift your community. And I find that to be so true about what we're doing. And with this particular episode in general is we are sending out so much love and light to communities that are hurting, that are in a state of repair, that they need to rebuild, they need to start fresh, they need to approach the situation with gratitude because it's just so heavy. Reiki really does that in an incredible way. Just some other takeaways that happened that I was just like, this week is so heavy, but in like a beautiful light way, almost like a hot air balloon, right? Like a hot air balloon on the ground probably weighs so much, but when it's filled with air and it floats, it presents that it's just this graceful, amazing illusion, if you will. And so I just feel like I've been like floating, like I've been very high, not in real life, but like I've just been. So yeah. So I had that happen this week too. And there was a lot of radical acceptance that came through from that too, where I don't ground myself a lot. I tend to just want to be in the higher chakras, not so much in the root chakra. I'd much rather be in the throat, in the heart, in the third eye chakra. There's some work that I am going to be doing on a daily basis to ground myself and bring back my life force energy. Because before we could get started, she was like, we're going to need to bring back some of your life force energy that is down in Florida.
I think that it would be cool for us. Maybe next year we can do a chakra series.
Oh, yeah.
We can talk about that and like
do one each of the chakras.
Yeah. And like grounding, meditation, all the things, kind of talking about what each one's purpose is and moving through that. I am going to challenge you guys this week. I want to challenge you to be non-judgmental. Now, I know most of us don't mean to be judgmental in any way, shape, or form. But what I want you to do this week is avoid labeling people, situations, or emotions as good or bad, and just accept them as they are. Just acknowledging how when we look at something, we're like, oh, that's bad. Oh, this emotion is bad, or anything. Just acknowledge it as what it is and try not to put a label on it this week. Take note of the things that we are attaching these good and bad labels to.
I think this is such a good exercise, and I think it's very doable, and I think it is something that will come up probably immediately after you listen to this episode. You will get hit with something. Just piggybacking on what Krystyn said, see how you feel after you have the acceptance of something that you didn't want to accept, but that you know you have to accept. And what does that feel in your body? Where do you feel that resonating? Because I will tell you, when you start going inward and doing some of these exercises, If you feel it in your throat, or you feel it in your head, or you feel it in your reproductive area, I will tell you that that means that there's work that needs to be done in that particular chakra, and it's probably not vibrating at a high frequency, which you can do a meditation, you can do...
Or you can go to Peru and do ayahuasca and just have yourself a time.
Well, we I like how you're like, or you can go do some hallucinogenic drugs and really go down that rabbit hole. But if you're just accepting the fact that you had to eat something you didn't want to eat, but that's what you had to do, maybe don't book a ticket to Peru yet.
Don't do ayahuasca just because you had to eat mushrooms. Wait, no, that doesn't even...
What? That's hilarious.
Oh my God. You guys. All right, guys. On that note, we're gonna send it off into the universe. Wish you guys an amazing week.
Yeah. Do some transformative shit. Yeah. And, just love on yourself. Get in with yourself and get in with yourself.
Get up with people.
Wow.
I mean, if you guys have been listening since the beginning, then you know about Up With People.
And radically accept something. Do it. I dare you.
I dare you, Rachel. The next...
That's probably how he fucks. That guy is probably not good in bed. You can tell.
Guaranteed he's not good.
No, can you? It's so funny when you meet people and
he's got no chill.
I don't know if you do this, but I do this where I'm like, you probably suck in bed. Even though I'm married and I have absolutely no desire to have sex with anybody else, I always just am like,
no, there's definitely been, this is super judgy, but there's definitely been time where Charlie and I will meet a couple.
Is it judgment or discernment?
And I'll be like, wow. Well, afterwards I'll be like, they must have terrible sex.
It's so
I know
true.
It's so terrible.
When you people watch, it's one of the things too that I'm like, yeah, that's fascinating. But that's where my brain goes. I want everyone to have good sex. I think good sex is a right.
Thank you, Motorcycle Man, for bringing this
up.
into
If you couldn't hear it, there was a motorcycle that was going by the house very loud. But instead of just driving the motorcycle like a normal person,
just revved his stupid little engine a couple times.
The whole way up the...
Will you please stop making that noise in my ear?
Sorry.
We get it, Rachel. We get it.
All right. We love you guys. Thank you for supporting the podcast. Thank you for sharing the podcast. Thank you for liking the podcast. Thank you for downloading the podcast.
Thank you so much. We love you guys.
All right. Bye.
Bye.